The largest population of Afro-Latinos in the U.S. reside in the Northeast region of the United States. Could their perspectives or ideas be a little different than mine? I live in the rural South of the United States, and I invite you to join me as we learn about the perspectives of those who have struggled and have attained success. This podcast is for those who want to learn more about issues of identity, racism, colorism, and culture. Each podcast episode will be in English and Spanish, so look out for all those episodes with odd numbers. They will be in English. The episodes with even numbers will be in Spanish. Please consider supporting this podcast by liking, providing comments wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, and many others. Please share it with your friends, students, children, and others who may be interested in exploring these topics on culture. The podcast will be released each Saturday morning. Mark your calendars and stay tuned. So welcome! My name is Jennifer White, and I'm an Afro-Latina teacher in the rural South.
This week's episode was recorded on my birthday. I'm so excited to introduce my mom's podcast today. My name is Ariel, and I am my mom's eldest daughter. Though I am not into the pop culture too much, I recognize that many in this generation love it and keep up with it. I'm still on TikTok all the time scrolling.
Hey, Ariel, can you pronounce scrolling right, please?
Okay. I'm on TikTok all the time scrolling.
Okay, that's right.
My mom's first interview is with an Afro-Latina who feels that her culture growing up was the pop culture. Welcome to episode 5 with Kendra Beltran, a fellow podcaster and a resident of Virginia where I live now. My mom's so awesome. Well, you weren't supposed to hear that.
Thank you so much, Ariel, for doing this introduction today. I had the pleasure of spending the weekend with her in Virginia while I was at the annual Southern Conference of Language Teaching in Norfolk. This year, I had the honor of presenting the new 2022 Southern Region Teacher of the Year Award to Claudia Elliott. Congratulations, Claudia! If you are hearing, Claudia, besos y abrazos y muchas felicitaciones.
Hey, welcome. I have here Kendra Beltran, and I'm so excited to have her. Kendra is actually my very first experience with podcasting, and having a podcast interview with a total stranger. Like, I've never met her. This is the first time I ever see her, and I'm so excited to have her because I've read so much about her, and I just can't wait to hear what she has to say. So, Kendra, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, please?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be your first guest. As you said, my name is Kendra Beltran. I am a podcaster, freelance writer. My podcast is called Crushgasm. Guests come on and we talk about the highs and lows of crushes, from animated crushes like Beast from Beauty and the Beast to more real crushes like maybe your first middle school crush that crushed your heart, things like that. And yeah, I live in Virginia now. I'm a California girl, and I just moved to the East Coast for the first time in over 30 years. I got 34 years of sun, and I said, you know what, time for a change. So now it's a snowstorm is coming, and I'm a little upset.
Oh my goodness. My daughter lives in Virginia. She just moved there. She moved from Alabama all the way to Virginia. So she told me today's her birthday, and she's like, Mom, it's going to be 20 inches of snow. And I'm like, what? 20 inches of snow?
Oh my God.
I'm glad I'm not over there right now. So I'm sorry that you're going to have to deal with that today.
Yeah, we have to run our errands today, and because they said Sunday, Monday, try to stay off the roads.
Oh no. Oh my gosh. I think that's a good thing if it doesn't happen a lot. You stay home and watch TV if the lights don't go out,
They
That's
said this area is kind of gets the least. We're about 2 hours out from DC. I think they're going to get a lot more than we are, hopefully.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right, so Kendra, I called you and I contacted you specifically because you told me you were an Afro-Latina. And when it comes to being an Afro-Latina, I like to hear about people's journeys of, were they ever considered that? Did they ever know that they were an Afro-Latina or an Afro-Latino? And I just wanted to know, first of all, your last name is Beltran. Where does that come from?
Well, actually, like I grew up, my mom is Spanish and white, and she leaned more towards her white side, even though she looked Native American. She could have passed for that. And we didn't grow up with any type of accent or anything. So I didn't know my name had a roll to it and like the Beltran until I had a Hispanic substitute in elementary school. And they called roll. And I was like, wow, they said it so different. And then I kind of was like, well, I guess my nana and tata are his they're Spanish. So I was like, okay. But yeah, it does come from my mom's side. I'm actually really lucky because my mom gave me not only life, but she gave me two brothers. And my older half brother, he got his father's last name, and my younger brother got our dad's last name. So I'm the only Beltran of the siblings.
Wow. And Beltran, does it have an accent on the A? Did you ever know if it was like that or it's just with an A with no
I
accent?
usually would say Beltran, and then
Beltran.
now I'm
Okay.
like Beltran. It is Spanish. It comes from my paternal grandfather. He was the Spanish one, and my grandma, my maternal grandma, was German and Irish.
Wow, look at that. What beautiful mix of culture that you have. That is amazing.
A lot
So,
going on.
gosh, that is just amazing. So tell me your journey of discovering and accepting who you are culturally, like in racial and ethnically.
Well, the journey to acceptance really didn't start until like my 20s. I grew up in the 90s in this like small desert town where there were only like three or four Black kids in my class. And as far as Hispanic kids, there were maybe five. But I mean, that's not to say we didn't have them everywhere because we lived in a small town. If you drove like 10 minutes east, there was a bigger city, and they had like Hispanic, Asian, like it was way more cultural. But in my elementary school, there wasn't anybody that was like me. There was nobody mixed with these two type of things. So growing up, especially in the 90s on TV, there was none of that representation either. So I never really saw myself in life or in pop culture. So I kind of just started to accept that race wasn't my basis of who I was. It was more like I identified with TV characters. Like I loved Jane from Daria, Malcolm from Malcolm in the Middle because he was the middle child and he was really smart like me. So in my 20s, I started to realize like, okay, I started to get more proud because I think, especially like the internet has a lot of bad, but it also has a lot of good because it opened it up to like the natural hair movement. Because I grew up hating my hair. I don't know if you did as well. I was like begging my mom every time there was any like special occasion. I was like, please just let me straighten my hair. Just let me. And then I would always hate it, but then I wanted it more and more. So in my 20s, the natural hair movement and this like Black Lives Matter and everything started to help me like, okay, maybe I am okay. So it didn't start till my 20s of actually accepting myself as like a Black and Hispanic woman.
That's awesome. And you mentioned hair. I'm doing an episode just on hair because hair and identity is such a big deal. Me coming from the Dominican Republic, hair is a big deal. I mean, when you take a photo for a company or for like as a professional photo, like for your carnet, which is our ID, you gotta have your hair straightened. And I didn't
Mhm.
know that until, I moved over here and I read about it and I heard other people talking about it. And I remember, just like you, on special occasions, I wanted to just straighten my hair and the chemical process and just learning that that's just trying to, I mean, to me, it wasn't a big deal. It was just like, I just want to look different. I wasn't trying to look white or trying to, nothing like that. I just saw that it was accepted and it was beautiful to look like that. So that's why I did that. So I'm just like you, discovered myself way later. But
Yeah, they said like we're trained to think straight hair means professional, it means beautiful.
yeah.
And then you think that. So when you have your curly hair, you're like, oh, this isn't special, this isn't beautiful. So you have to like shake that. And I think there have been times, especially back even in the early 2000s, well, the 2010s, I was like out of college, I was trying to get jobs and I had natural hair and I wasn't like getting anything but I wouldn't change my hair or anything like that. So I think it still kind of matters to some people in some industries, but hopefully that is continuing to change.
I hope so too. I do hope. And then, so you're saying that going back to what you were saying about pop culture, so pop culture pretty much shaped your identity and what you thought about yourself at the beginning. I've never heard of that. That's like amazing. That's the first I've heard of something like that. So that I could understand where you're coming from with that. And I'm glad that even though you accepted to be a Black Latina, you still identify with that pop culture. Do you? Up to now?
Yeah, there's still characters like if the character is like a middle child, that is a big thing to me because that is so much in part. I think that's so part of like who I am because like Lisa Simpson was the first middle child who was, I always say I'm a Lisa stuck between two Barts because my brothers they're 18 years apart, but and they have different dads, but there's something they got the same genetic makeup. They're both bad, rebellious, teen fathers. And then there's me who is like, I'm gonna go to school. I'm gonna be perfect. I like always like I never gave my mom any trouble. I was so boring. I was like, just please leave me alone in my room with like my books.
I
Like,
understand.
and then I think my mom also being like a white Hispanic woman with these Black kids, she kind of would teach us our culture through movies. Like, I don't know if she intentionally did this, but she would put on Boys in the Hood, which at 5 or so, not appropriate, but she was like, here are Black people. And I remember watching Waiting to Exhale and being like, okay, we watched a lot of Martin Living Single. And for our Hispanic side, she made it, I don't know if this is big in every brown family, but Blood In, Blood Out. This movie, like a lot of my friends who are like my best friend, she's Mexican, Native American, and white. And she was like, when we first got to talking in elementary school, she's like, yeah, Blood In, Blood Out's huge in my family. I was like, huh. And La Bamba and
Oh yeah.
Selena.
Oh yes.
So I think my mom kind of ingrained it in me that, hey, you connect to TV and movies. So that's just how I developed from there.
Now, did your mom ever feel, or did she ever get any backlash from the public, like random people coming up to her saying, "Oh, you adopted those kids. How cute. You're such a good lady."
There was only one instance I remember somebody calling her our babysitter. We were at this lake and she was with my brother, who was like 2 or 3 at the time. And a little kid kind of didn't understand that she was our mom and not just like some random white woman.
Yeah.
That was kind of it. Because my mom in our small town at the time, we only had like a liquor store and
Okay.
maybe like a gas station. And she happened to work at the 2 establishments throughout my childhood. So everyone knew her. And my dad was at the time a cop. So everyone knew him too as a small town. So nobody really bothered us. But I can't imagine what it was like for the 2 other Black girls I grew up with who were full Black and the only like full Black families in that area. They didn't have like my mom, who was kind of like the gatekeeper of our small town and everything.
I see. That's so interesting. I really love how your mom, I would love to meet your mom because I know that she has a story to all of this.
I
And
actually I asked her because she grew up mixed, being white and Hispanic in the 70s. And I asked her one time, because we never talked about race in our house. We did, I mean, it's a cliche to say, but we didn't really see color. She taught us to treat people how you would like to be treated,
that's good.
no matter your age or your race or anything like that. So I asked her maybe several years ago, and she said, no, nobody ever gave me any trouble because if they did, I'd just beat them up because that's the type of girl she is.
Yeah.
She was a
Wow.
fighter.
That is good. That is good. She seems like a fighter. That is amazing.
But my
Now,
dad,
oh, tell me about your dad. Yes, tell me about your
yeah,
dad.
my dad is 85 this year. So he's a lot older than my mom, 20 some years older. So he actually did grow up during the, segregation era. So his stories are insane to hear about. And I whenever he gets to talking, it's really interesting because he grew up in Texas. So he grew up in the South, and his stories of having to go into the back door of buildings and being, picked on. And then he became a cop, and he was one of 2 Black officers at the time. And he said he still received so much, crap for that. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Wow. I love hearing those stories. And it's really important for us to ask our parents, our grandparents those questions because when they're gone, they're gone. It's like we can't get it straight from their mouths. And that's what I regret about my granddad. He passed away. He was in the Dominican Republic. He was extremely dark skinned. We call it blue black. And
Like,
he spoke perfect English. And growing up, I did not understand how he spoke perfect English until later that he died. That they told me, oh, last name is Clark, of all names, last name is Clark. Started investigating and about Dominican Republic, that there was actually a colony that everyone's last name was English. And they came from the Underground Railroad. And I'm like, what? That is amazing. But hey, how do I investigate that now? I have no clue if my granddad really did come from the Underground Railroad. I have no clue where he comes from. Everybody died already. So all I could do is just find my genealogy and try to figure that out. But it's like all these mysteries about your life that it's good to know now while you're alive, right? But
Yeah, because everybody predate, I mean, we call them boomers or whatever their generation and everything. They didn't have the internet. And today we document so much of who we are online that, future generations are going to be able to just pull up everything. And, that's not the case with our moms and grandparents and great grandparents. Unfortunately, I wish I could know more about that era. Or as horrible as it was, it's interesting.
that's true. That is so true. So true. So right now, you being a grown person, who receives you best? Are you living in Virginia or even in California where you grew up? Who receives you best? Do you have a particular group? Like for instance, here in Anniston, Black people look at me and automatically they think I'm Black, so I get the nod. I get the
Oh,
Hispanics don't give me the nod because we don't do nods. But if a Hispanic sees me, sometimes they don't know if I'm Hispanic or not until I open my mouth and say hola. But they really don't see me as a Hispanic. If my hair is curly and I have mannerisms as an English person that speaks English or an American, they won't receive me that way. So just by looking at you, how do they receive you? Who receives you okay? Who doesn't? Who rejects you? Which is a hard question, but
I think the nod is definitely a thing. I distinctly remember the day after Obama won his first
yes.
presidency. I went to a taping of Jay Leno, The Tonight Show, and I had passed this older Black gentleman on the street, and the nod he gave me was the most proud Black nod of my life. Like I still remember all this years later. But yeah, Black people for sure. My dad was very nervous about me moving to Virginia. Every time he calls, he's like, "Have you seen our people?" Like he thinks there's no Black people around. It is there's Black people here because I live near a university and athletes. It's a big community.
Yeah.
um, I'd say Black people who don't get me the most. Well, the way I talk, white people definitely are like, "Oh, okay, she's not, quote unquote, threatening," because Black people have that stereotype, especially Black women, unfortunately. But I would say, like yourself, Hispanics. I spent 16 years living in Los Angeles after college, well, during and after, and I took the bus a lot. A lot of older Hispanic women take the bus as well in that community. And I would get some initial stares because they think, oh, it's just this Black girl. She's going to be loud. She's going to be rowdy. But once I smiled at them, I flashed my smile, they would be okay. But they don't know, like you said, they see the curly hair, they see your melanin. They don't assume that my mom is this little brown skinned woman and I have like my Catholic great nana and stuff and Tata in Arizona.
Yeah. Wow, yeah, we get that. We get that. The older, especially the older ones, the older people, the older Hispanics, a lot of them can judge quickly by the color of your skin. And it's a sad because if you look into their families, they probably have a Black kid, a brown kid, a white kid. Like I just saw the movie Encanto, Disney's Encanto, and I cried because I said, "Go Disney, go!" I wanted to just clap for them, like if they're in front of me, because I thought this is the first true representations of what a Latino is, a Latino family. It looks like this with all these colors, and that we're all just siblings, and it's okay if you're a redhead and you're white and you're Black and you're dark skinned. It doesn't matter. So I really love that. So, are there any Hispanic traditions that you observe, or any Black traditions that you observe that you can talk about?
Not necessarily because my mom didn't raise us on any cultural based thing. She was raised Catholic and she was forced to go to Catholic school until sixth grade. That's why she said, when I have kids, I'm not forcing religion on them because it was forced upon her and she hated it so much. But my great grandma, who had passed away, she was really into it. And she gave us the little rosaries, and we said this nightly prayer. And even though I'm not religious, to this day, I will still say it sometimes before I go to sleep, just because it's like ingrained in my head that tomorrow I'm going to have a good day if I say it. So it's probably the only thing that I've kept of that. In Black, my dad was in and out as a kid, so we never got any of that kind of experience, unfortunately. And it makes me sad today because even though again I'm not religious, I would have loved to have gone to a Black church. I think that is the coolest thing.
You could still do. Virginia has those.
Yeah, like that experience, and the big family barbecues you see and you hear about. I did get to go to one family reunion in 2015 or so with my dad's side, and that was just like a shock, and it was really cool. Unfortunately, we were supposed to have one in 2020, and fortunately that had to be canceled.
Oh, that sucks. That's not good.
Yeah, because my husband is white, and he was really excited to go because my dad's like, he could come too.
Wow, that's so you have to try to go to one of those. And definitely, I'm gonna definitely hook you up with my daughter who is in Virginia. We're probably talking about the same town. I don't want to mention it, but we're probably talking about the same town that she's in because it's a college town. But she said she found a Black church there and she really likes it. So, and she invited me to go, but when we went, we didn't have time to go. So I'm gonna definitely hook you up because it's always good to see not just what's part of your culture, but just what's around you when you live in a new community. It's good to explore the cultures of that community. So I try to do the same thing here with living in Anniston, Alabama, where I try to embrace all the cultures that are here, which I can't find all the cultures. But one time I did find a Samoan celebration, and they were like fire coming out of their mouth, and I was like, yes, gosh, yes. I was like, finally finding something that's not black or white, And
yeah, and that's they always say representation matters, but it's like I think Black people have definitely gotten a lot more as the years have gone by, but we're still fighting for the Hispanic community, the Asian community, all these other ones, Native Americans. They don't have that on TV as much as we have.
Yeah, that's true. And the Latin Americans have their own TV, they have their own Hollywood in every country. The problem with the representation there is that we don't see enough of the cultural variety. We just see one-sided of the Latinos. So that's why I'm so big on the Encanto, because I'm thinking, yes, beautiful. But right now we're watching a soap opera in my classroom called Go, Vive a tu manera, which is Go, Live Your Way. And it's on Netflix. And it's like the people are so light-skinned. I mean, so light-skinned. Beautiful people, gorgeous people. And then there's this one brown kid, and he's from Brazil. Oh, great. They're admitting that Brazil has, more Black people than white people. Yay. But it was like, okay, I noticed stuff like that because I'm always identifying. We're talking about identity. I'm always looking in a room and identifying. And not all the time. Sometimes I walk in and I'm just myself and it doesn't matter who I am or who anybody is.
Walking into a room in college, well, like late high school and in college, I went to a lot of concerts, and I was into the pop, punk, and emo scene. So you can imagine there's not a lot of darker skinned people. It's very white. Yeah. And me and my friend, the Native American white girl, she passes as white though. Like she's as white as a piece of paper. So she could blend. And we'd be like, there's one. And we'd count the Black people in the room. And I'd be like, oh, okay, there's another one. And you kind of look at them like, please look, acknowledge me. And then being in Los Angeles, there were Hispanic kids there. Pretty like a good amount, but again, they didn't see me as part of their world. They were just like, oh, there's another Black girl, or there's the one Black girl that's always at the shows.
Yeah, and I felt the opposite of that, being around all Black people and looking around and saying, hey, is there any Latinos around here? I was just thirsty to hear my music, thirsty about eating some food that someone else prepared. I love the Black culture. I learned to love everything about where I live. But like when I first got here, it's that I had just moved from Miami, Florida. So you can imagine everything's Cuban, everything's Latino, all the music, the loud music, the crazy folks, people talking loud, people honking. To come to a place is very reserved. People are different. People tell me Black people like watermelon and fried chicken, and I'm looking at them like, what the heck is that? I eat fried chicken and watermelon too. What's the deal? What's the story behind that? But that's what I'm saying. It's like I always was yearning for that. But is there
It's
anything
funny.
else you want to share
It's
with us?
funny you mentioned music because I grew up going to like swap meets, and they were like the people that sold music sold like the Spanish music, so you always hear that and so that was like comforting to me. So and after college, I moved to a city called Van Nuys, and it's very Hispanic heavy, and they would like bump that music, and it was just like a comfort from like childhood.
Yeah, that's definitely it. Now, when I came here, and the majority of Hispanics here are Mexican, so I had to learn about the Mexican culture, how they speak, to try to understand when they're speaking fast, when they have that drawl that they're mumbling. I had to try to learn all that stuff, and then for people to to assume, oh, you're Mexican because you're speaking Spanish, or oh, you don't know how to cook a burrito, you don't know how to make a guacamole? No, no, I don't. Do you know how to make what's that called from Louisiana? A gumbo? No, I don't know how to make gumbo. Well, I don't know how to make a burrito. Like, please stop putting me in a category like that. I'm from the Dominican Republic. That's like the Caribbean, and even then, I don't know how to make everything that the Dominican Republic provides because I grew up there and then I left, and then now I just gotta look at the internet to teach me about my culture that I forgot some of it. It's like kind of sad, but I'm so engulfed with learning about culture that sometimes I forget about my own. I'm like, oh, let me go find out the news about Dominican Republic. Let me go see what they're making for Easter. Let me see what they make for Christmas. Let me, remembering my mom's traditions and my dad. So just can't forget those things because my kids have to learn it too. So, but is there anything else you want to share with us about identity, cultural identity, race, ethnicity?
I think it mentioned like have I ever been like confused for a different race or something?
Oh, yes.
And for sure, I got Puerto Rican before, but the big one was I took the bus a lot, and there was this man, this Hispanic man who swore I was Colombian, and I was in my 20s, and like in Encanto, it's in Colombia. I didn't know there were black people down there, so I was like, "What is he?" I thought you think I'm like Hispanic because you think of Colombia, you think Shakira or something. I was like,
Exactly.
okay, let's not say I look like that. That's a little much. Like she's up here. Come on.
Yeah.
I was like flattered, but yeah. So those were the two, and I think for identity, I think it's like one of those dice from like Dungeons and Dragons with like the 20 sides. We have not only our race, but we have our sexual orientation, our religion, our likes, our dislikes. I think you shouldn't put so much clout into one area of what you are and what you identify as because it all makes you up and it all makes you wonderful.
It's so true. It is so true. And because that subject is so broad, that's why I only focused on the racial and the ethnicity, only because I'm a Spanish teacher. And as a Spanish teacher, we have to teach the culture of the Latin Americans. So that's why I'm coming from that angle because that's something we have to teach in our classes. And this podcast I know is going to be listened to by many Spanish teachers and world language instructors, and shout out to world language instructors out there, and also to students that are learning how to speak another language. And sometimes that cultural part of it is something that could be missing to bridge that gap between them and another culture, because if you could learn a language and you don't know the culture, you could miss a lot. You get beat up.
Yeah, I saw Denzel Washington. He was asked recently why like he wanted a black director on his film and why it's important to have people. And he's like, it's not about, he's like, yeah, Steven Spielberg is a great director, but when it comes to it, he doesn't know the culture. He's not going to know the importance of hiring a black hairdresser and why that's important, or a black, makeup artist because they won't know the skin. So he's like, it's more important that our directors know our culture instead of just like the art form of. So
That's true. And I didn't want to bring this up, but like there's this movie called In the Heights. I don't know if you've heard of it, but a lot of people talked about how it's missing the dark skinned Latinos that were the stars of the show. It's like there's none of them that are dark skinned. And a lot of people are like, well, the director is Asian, which is all good. I love Asian folks. But the director didn't know to put like a dark skinned person. Then they blame the creator, Lin-Manuel, but he's not the director. So it's like, okay, the director, like what you're saying, the director does play a big role, even though I know Lin-Manuel played a big role in saying what he has to say. But, you know, on his defense, he probably never saw any dark-skinned Latinos, even though he grew up in Washington Heights. You know, I grew up there too. I'm trying to defend him because he's such a wonderful guy. Like, I don't want to talk bad about him because he's such a great guy, and he's putting Latinos out there, and he did come out in Encanto. He actually wrote the music and stuff like that, so I'm so glad about that. But this is one of the complaints in that movie was that what's up with the dark Latinos? The reason why people move to Washington Heights is because there's dark people. There's a black neighborhood, like there's a bunch of Dominicans over there. So it's like it's portraying the culture to be very mixed, and it really isn't very mixed at all. So, but anyway, I am so excited that you came and participated in my first podcast. Yay! And I hope I didn't butcher it. Oops. It's okay. It's all right. But anyway, I know it's okay. So I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much. If you could please tell the audience, where can they find you? If they want to follow you, please spell your name out too for anybody in that's listening to this podcast that may spell your name wrong, please.
Well, it's Kendra Beltran. It's Kendra. B as in boy, Eltran. And you can find me at crushgasmpodcast.com. And there's a bunch that, and they have the socials, everything. I never remember like what, is it Crushgasm Pod or Crushgasm Podcast? Like I never remember all that for the handles, but if you just go to crushgasmpodcast.com, you can find all the shows, all the blogs, all about the crushes.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Kendra's been doing this much longer than I have. So I'm just a baby. She's probably a teenager in this now.
I like a tween.
A tween? Okay, a tween. I'll take that. I'll take that. So I appreciate you coming on. You didn't even know me, and you said, hey, I'll help you out. And I appreciate that because we really do need to stick together and support one another. So I appreciate you coming out here and telling us some deep stuff about your family because it's not easy talking about these personal things, especially things that you don't even talk about in your podcast. You're telling me these things, and now it's like, whoa, we know that about her. We know her daddy, and we know her mama.
Well, thank you for having me. Always happy to help. I started my podcast because my white husband he loves podcasts, but I noticed it is a very like white male, straight male dominated world, and I was like, no. You
have to mix it up, huh?
Yeah, that's why on my show I allow the straight white males to come on from time to time, but I do try to broaden the spectrum because we all have a story to tell.
You're right. I never even thought about that as I got into the podcast community. It's true. It's more males, white males. I didn't even go into it because of that. I went into it because I felt a yearning that I had to do something. I said, this topic needs to be talked about. And when I Googled Afro-Latino, I did see a lot of Afro-Latinos, but they were all like in Chicago, New York, up north. And I said, maybe there's nobody in the South. And maybe I could find someone from Miami. But someone that's representing my area here is like, okay, I think I can, contribute to this. So yeah, thank you for contributing. Thank you for representing.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you so much. Tell your husband I said hello, even though he doesn't know who I am. That's a Hispanic thing. You gotta leave with saying, okay, tell your mom I said hi, tell your dad, tell your husband, your dad, your kitties, your doggies, whatever you have at home, please tell them I said hi, saludos. And I hope to see you again. And I'm definitely going to keep in touch with you. So much success in your podcast. And remember, her name is Kendra Beltran. And find her on her podcast, which is Crushgasm. Please find her, follow her. And we're so excited that she was here. Thank you so much, Kendra.
Thank you
for being here today. Adios. Okay, so Kendra, tell me 2 fun facts about where you live or where you used to live. You could tell me about California or about maybe Virginia, where you live now. Tell me 2 fun facts about that place.
I'll tell you one about where I was born, and I'll tell you one about where I live now. So I was born in California, and I lived in this small desert town called Cabazon, California. You probably have passed through it if you've ever gone to the big music festival Coachella or the country one Stagecoach. But we have those giant like dinosaurs that have been featured in the movie Pee Wee Herman. It's the ones he flies over at the end of the movie on his bike. You can actually go into them. It's a gift shop in a little museum. And they're really cool. And when they filmed that movie, my mom worked at the gas station right there as the Texaco, and she got to meet him. So that's cool. And then where I live now, it's Harrisonburg, Virginia. And I didn't know this, but I learned it recently. Rosetta Stone was founded here in 1992.
Wow, that is so cool.
Goes along with you being a Spanish teacher. There you go.
That is so cool. I think that is amazing. That is really amazing. Now in Alabama, in Anniston, fun fact, we do have the biggest office chair in my city. That's like my city. That's the biggest thing that they have is a huge, huge office chair. And I remember inviting a Zumba instructor over here from Belgium, and he said, "I want to sit on that chair." And I'm like, "Sure, we can make it happen." But no, because of insurance purposes, I couldn't get him to sit on the chair. So that's one thing about.
Is it like outside, like, the world's biggest ball
Yeah,
of yarn or whatever?
it's outside. It's outside. And then another fun fact about Alabama is because of Alabama that the whole United States celebrates Christmas, because before Christmas wasn't celebrated in the United States, and then Alabama was the first state that began celebrating Christmas, and then people started celebrating Christmas. Isn't that cool?
Yeah. I just thought it was like, I don't know, one day they were like, let's give presents.
I was like, hey, so Christmas was all over the world, and then it came here, and I was like, yay, go Alabama. So I like to talk nice, positive things about where I am, because it's always good to know that you're in a good place, because you hear a lot of bad things. There's a lot of negative things about where I live, but I try to find the good things. So I'm so glad you found some good stuff from Virginia. That is awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Supporting this podcast by liking, sharing, commenting, and letting me know if you're listening by finding me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Don't forget that the next episode, for episode 6, the content will be in Spanish. So if you happen to be a Spanish student, check it out and see if you understand the content and practice listening. Be sure to compare the two because they are not exactly the same. Don't forget, when things are hard out there, they are not here to stay. It's only for a time. Jot these difficult moments down and go back to them later to notice how much you've grown because of your current struggle. Don't get bitter, get better. Find positive people to surround yourself with and laugh out loud. That is just like taking medicine. And don't forget to be kind to those around you. You never know when someone will need your smile and a compliment from you. Adios. Bilingual Kids Incorporated is hosting a summer camp for 2 weeks this summer. 1 week will be a language immersion camp and the other week will be a fitness camp. In both camps, students will be learning Spanish and learning how to eat healthy and engage in many fun activities. These camps are only the beginning of a year-long program that will extend into the school year, where they will practice their Spanish and learn how to live an active and healthy lifestyle. Bilingual Kids needs your help. Please consider sponsoring a child for a one-time donation of $110 to cover 1 week, or give a monthly donation to help support our language and fitness programs in the summer and throughout the year. Bilingual Kids Incorporated is a 501c3 nonprofit organization which helps fill the gap of communication between parents, children, and their community while teaching children to speak Spanish, and provides services to Hispanic families. Help us ignite the love of learning a new language and living a healthy lifestyle. Donate today to Cash App Bilingual Kids with your name and email so that we can send you a receipt of your giving. Thank you so much for your willingness to help support our children.